Welcome to the Simsbury Woman. I'm Barbara O'Connor. One of the characteristics of Simsbury that continues to impress me is the spirit of volunteerism that adds so much to the quality of our lives. Spirit is evidenced by the appearance of so much around town. When you look at places like the Flower Bridge or the Terrafield Green, or even the spaces in the highway that are cared for by those on the beautification committee. Gosh, SCTV is heavily run by volunteers. But there's so much more, so much that adds to our cultural life. And that spirit is especially present when it comes to the performing arts. I am thrilled today to have with me two women who personify the dedication and professionalism of those involved in the arts here in Simsbury, in particular, the Simsbury Summer Theater. Nancy Grandin is the president of the board of the Simsbury Summer Theater, and Amanda Moulet is the assistant director. This year, Simsbury Summer Theater is celebrating its 50th season. Today we'll learn about its history, some alumni, and what we have to look forward to in the future. Thank you both for joining me today. Nancy, I'd like to start with a little bit of the history of the program, but first I want to tell you a story that you may not be aware of. Prior to my first house hunting trip in Simsbury 8 years ago, the only thing I knew about Simsbury was that it was the hometown of a girl who lived with me in college. And she now lives still in the Farmington Valley. She and I were walking around not too long, and we came into Eno Hall, and she said, you know, I worked on Little Abner here before I was in high school, I think, and I was a props person. And it was so neat because they had a party for the cast at the end of the show, and somebody named Peg Perry of Canton brought her sister, Katharine Hepburn, to the party. And she said, the woman didn't say anything to us, but I was so impressed. And I was a very impressionable kid at the time. But here, Simsbury had somebody like that. And I think, you know, with 50 seasons, there have got to be dozens of stories like that, where people have gone on to bigger bright lights.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have people who've gone to Broadway, in Hollywood. They do a variety of different things, or have. They are or they have. Some of them are on stage. Some of them are backstage.
Some of them are conducting,
some
like
of them are conducting,
Eric.
Right, Eric Dudley certainly is one of our alums. I think what's important sort of to look at that is we have almost 3,000 alums who've been through the program in the 50 years. And I think all of them in some way, shape, or form sort of keep their finger in it. You know, there may be people who didn't necessarily go to Broadway or whatever, but they're doing a lot of things in their community theater, for example, like if they live in a town where they have something like Theater Guild, they would be participating in that. They're music professionals. I think once you're on stage, once you're backstage, once you're involved in something like this, you never stop doing it.
Now, how exactly did the Summer Theater start?
It started in 1966, which is confusing to people because this is 2015, so they get a little confused when we say it's our 50th year. I'm constantly explaining that. It's our 50th show because we don't count per year, we count per show. Okay. So it's our 50th show. It's our 50th anniversary. There was, back in the early 60s in Simsbury, there was a group called the St. Mary's Players, and they were based out of St. Mary's Church, and it was a group that was, I think, predominantly adults, but when they did a show, you know, kids were involved, which is really how often community theater starts, sort of organically, with a group of people who, like they say in Babes in Arms, says, let's put on a show. I mean, that's what they do. And St. Mary's certainly has a very talented group of people ongoing. You know, it's a musical church. So this group of people got together. And Simsbury at that point was small, too. I mean, compared to what it is today. It was, I think, 3,000 or so people. So it was, everybody sort of knew everybody. They put on the show Bye Bye Birdie. And when the show was over, the kids who were members were very disappointed. They spent their spring doing the show, and they were sort of like, well, this was great, what do we do? And two of the people who were involved, Michael Hurley, who was Judge Hurley at the time, he was the director as a volunteer, and a woman named Betty Emery sort of put their heads together with some of the other adults and said, well, maybe we can do this. And they kind of pulled it off fairly quickly, so that summer, the group that you were referring to did Little Abner, actually upstairs on the theater stage up there. And that's when it started. It was pretty low-key. You know, they went to churches around town and asked for money, and I should give a shout out to St. Mary's. They have supported Simsbury Summer Theater for 50 years. They've made a contribution every year to us. So they put this money together and put the show on. And then it kind of, from there, it kind of ended up having a structure as it sort of went along over the next few years. They decided that this is something they wanted to continue. They put some policies in place, and then they put a board in place. And so by the time, I think the early 70s rolled around, they had a volunteer board. They had bylaws. They'd incorporated as a not-for-profit with the state, that kind of thing. And so that's how it got its beginnings.
And how did you get involved?
I wasn't involved in the beginning, but then when I was growing up, Simsbury Summer Theater, it was called Simsbury Summer Theater for Youth at that point. We changed the name a few years ago to sort of better reflect the group of kids that we had. Also because there were younger groups, sort of, there are more groups for younger children. So what the word youth meant in 1966 is not necessarily what it means now. So that's why we changed to Simsbury Summer Theater. But at the point that I joined, it was Simsbury Summer Theater for Youth. And I just liked drama. My mother would probably agree with that.
I think there are a few mothers who would agree with that, yes.
And I liked to sing, and it was something that was available during the summer. And Simsbury, at the point that I was a member, which I started in the mid-70s, was, again, smaller, and there was not as much to do. Not that that's a good or a bad thing, but it was just...
It was different.
It was different. It was just different. And so summer theater, as we called it, was sort of the big thing. If you were in music and you were a drama kid, this is what you did, was theater. So I started with Annie Get Your Gun, which was actually, interestingly, the 10th anniversary, the first anniversary party that they had. Do you want the whole quick story?
Sure.
Okay. I don't want to take up all the time with talking about me. But so I was a member for 6 years, and was on their youth board. There was an adult board of directors, and then there are youth officers. So I was a youth officer for 3 years. And then kind of went off and did other things after I aged out.
Right. What is the age now?
It is to age 22. Okay. Which is the same as it's been. The entering age is younger than it was. When I started, the entering age was you were after your freshman year of high school. And now we actually, going into ninth grade is our cutoff. So I was an officer, and then, like I said, I went off after that, had a wonderful time doing it, but went off to grad school, did all that good stuff, and then moved back to Simsbury and got re-involved, and have been sort of on and off involved since the mid-'80s when I moved back. And my most recent stint is that I have 2 children, and one of whom is a very good friend of Mandy's, which is how we became friends. And my older son joined in the late 90s, and they were saying, does anybody want to help? And I was like, well, I know a little bit about this organization. So it kind of went from there. And I've been president of the board for the last 10 years. So I think my total commitment, my total involvement, including as a youth, is almost 30 years.
So you're a lifer.
Yeah, kinda, yes. Yes. Several of my friends really think I need therapy.
I can understand.
But yes.
So you got into this kind of following the way so many of us, as this friend of mine pulled me into it.
Yes. Yes, basically. When I just remember right now, this image came to my mind of me sitting in science class and my friends telling me about how much fun summer theater was. And at that point, I think was just massive.
So did you grow up here in town?
Yep, I went to Simsbury High School.
Okay.
Yep. I'm, you know, still living around here, so.
So am I. It's
yeah, I'll be here forever. I love it. It's beautiful. So yeah, one of my friends told me it's the best thing ever, and that was sort of this massive high point, I think, for summer theater. So everybody was doing it. So I was like, all right, let's go, let's do it. And my first show was Guys and Dolls, and it was awesome. I was so excited because at the beginning of the show, there were all these crossovers where people got to kind of act and just pantomime, and I got to be like a famous actress. So I was so excited. And then did 7 shows where I was in the shows, and then volunteered. Oh yeah,
you were president.
I was president. Forgot about that. For 3 years of the youth board, and worked really closely with Nancy.
Okay.
That's sort of how we became so close. And then after that, came back and volunteered. I couldn't stay away.
It's very familiar.
Yeah, it happens a lot. And now, last year was hired to be the assistant to the director. So it's been pretty.
Now, when you talk about kids talking about all they did with the summer, what are the, you know, I think everybody thinks automatically of the actors and actresses, but you've got stagehands.
There's on
prop
stage and
people,
backstage, right?
You've got orchestra too.
We had orchestra for a very long time. We had a student orchestra for a long time, but what we found with that, this is a relatively recent development, is that for a lot of kids go away from music camp, understandably, when they're instrumentalists. There are, again, having the difference between when summer theater started and now, there are an awful lot more opportunities for kids across the board, vocally, you know, instrumentally, and in terms of tech theater. I mean, it's something that's grown exponentially. So that particularly for instrumentalists, there are so many camps that they can go to increase their skill set. And for those who are really want to be performance ready, that makes an awful lot of sense. And the other thing that happens too with the orchestra for us is that, you know, we have a 6-week period that we do it. Summer theater, when it started, was 8 weeks and has been compressed to 6 weeks, just sort of because of the changes in the school calendar and that kind of thing. And again, wanting kids to have the opportunity to do summer theater, but also, you know, go on vacation and do all those other things. So, in short, for the orchestra members, in essentially having to be show ready in 5 weeks for 39 songs of a Broadway book is a huge stress. And it's not that it's a reflection on their abilities. It's just that isn't something that they'd be asked to do in high school. So we also, which may be a question that comes up later, but we have changed location on several occasions, and we are currently now at the Warner Centennial Theater, air-conditioned.
At Westminster
School, which is huge. The orchestra pit's very small there, too. So for the benefit of our student musicians, so that they had a better experience, and for the benefit of the kids who are on stage, to not put pressure on student musicians to have to be show-ready and play for you know, student vocalists is a lot.
So what do you do now? Do you have a professional orchestra?
We have a professional orchestra. Yeah, it's small. I mean, it's not necessary. There is the other side of that with the professional orchestra. You can fit them all in the pit because you play. Each one of them is able to play the part to the point that it, by themselves, as opposed to having to have, you know, 4 violins. We really only need 1. And the theater is, it's a lovely, comfortable theater, very intimate, so that the music fills the whole hall, as opposed to a larger theater where sometimes the sound gets a little lost. So this is very clear.
Let's kind of take a chronology of how you get from deciding on the show to the final performance on August 2nd this year.
August 1st.
August 1st, excuse me, at 2 o'clock.
At
right?
2 o'clock.
Yes, that's the Anyway, how do you decide on the show, and then what happens?
It's definitely a year-round job.
Yes.
Without a doubt. It's not just a summer
So you're
decision.
thinking now about what you want to do next year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a little added... for us, in a way, it's hard and it's easy. My husband is the director, so we talk about summer theater every day. all the time. And so for us, it's sort of, it is 365 days, you know, and so.
But it needs to be.
It does.
It's a big job.
In order to do that, I mean, Mandy's right that it's a lot. And so we are already sort of thinking where we'll be next year in terms of what kids and shows and abilities. And so a lot of that has to do with longevity. It's actually very helpful. My husband's been involved as a director for 17 years. He directed Mandy and directed our son, and now is directing our daughter, is in Fiddler. So we know the kids. We have an idea of who returns each year. And so not that you can pick a show based on a particular kid or a group, but you know your kids, you know what their abilities are. You also, we talk about things like, well, what did we do last year? Do we want to have one that's similar or not similar, or do we want to depart? We did something, that was a costume drama last year. What do we want to do this year? That kind of thing. So,
right, and your audience for something like Cinderella is going to be a lot younger and maybe want autographs after.
Which
and
we did.
Yeah, so that's going to be a lot of more of a different audience than something like Fiddler on the Roof. So we sort of like to switch it up, I think.
Right. Would you ever do anything like some of the shows that sometimes tend to be a little more, controversial isn't really the right word, but I'm thinking like some of the contemporary musicals, like Rent or something like that?
I don't think we would. Not necessarily because they're controversial, but because there is less opportunity for chorus roles. In modern musical theater.
Right. Now, when you've decided on a show and thinking the traditional Rodgers and Hammerstein type show that you've done, you send out a casting call or what, or just anybody who's interested in being part of this show up? How does that all work?
Well, we advertise. We let obviously we notify kids who've been participating when it is. But the high school is always very accommodating. They allow us to, as actually the junior high as well. Both the principals allow us to put the times and dates of our auditions in, and the staff is always very accommodating. We post on the bulletin board at the high school. They're supportive of what we do. Colleen Thompson is the music director, the choral director there, and Stuart Yance is the theater director, and they're very supportive of our program, and we share the kids. I mean, they're a lot of the same kids.
I think social media has helped a lot in the last few years, because that's sort of where kids' minds are at. So you can kind of grab them while they're on there.
Does that help with getting more of the backstage kids too, do you think?
It doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, I don't think. I think what often happens in general, especially with incoming freshman kids, is it depends on if they've had a positive experience in another theater program, how motivated they are to do that, and then if their friends are doing it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, Mandy just said that exactly right. Right. And then once they're with us, it's sort of like then they have a group of kids. We were when Summer Theater started, and when I was participating, and even through the time most of the time that Mandy was doing it, it was for Simsbury youth, and it was just for Simsbury. And we have, over the years, adjusted that to the point now that it's open. As long as kids fit the age range, it's open to those kids. And some of that has to do with, it's two things. One is we think we offer a great program, and we want other kids to have an opportunity to do that. When it first started, it made sense to have it just be Simsbury, but it doesn't make sense in this day and age to do that. And there are also a lot of other local theater programs that there weren't when we were started, and so I think it's good for kids to have opportunities to choose from.
So there are programs in other towns in the area that are similar.
They're similar. I don't think they've all been in existence as long as we have. I think we are one of, if not, I am always hesitant to say we're the oldest, but we certainly are one of the longest standing youth groups for teens. And the other groups they have different sizes. Canton has a program, Avon has a program, so they all meet needs of different kids, and I think that that's not a bad thing at all. I think that the performing arts you can't have enough of that.
Right. Now, this year's show, Fiddler on the Roof, how many students are involved in?
We have 54 kids.
54?
50, and
Both
they
back
range,
and front?
Yeah, back total. They range from incoming freshmen to our oldest is 21. So it's a wide range, and actually, and again, I think Mandy can speak to this because my experience was so long ago. But one of the things I think that makes Simsbury Summer Theater what it is that the relationships between the age groups, that there's not a delineation between that.
Yeah, I learned how to act by watching the oldest kids in the group. That's how I learned how to be professional and everything that comes along with building a character and singing, everything. So I learned from those older kids, and then once I got to be one of the older kids, it was more like a leadership position. Yeah. So I think you're learning, you know, from the time that you enter until the time that you leave when you're 22. So
my husband always has a discussion. He works directly with the leads, as does Mandy. And she's heard the speech each year. He talks to them about the fact that if you are a lead, the operative word is lead. You are leading the group. You are a leader. And that it is more than just getting up there and singing or acting. It's being a role model and having the other kids learn from you, not just acting skills and that kind of thing, but also how to be responsible and how to act appropriately and all of those things. And we're all about team building. We have a no cell phone rule. The kids turn in their cell phones at the beginning of the rehearsal and they pick them up at the end, because our feeling is that when you're with this group of people, you need to be present with this group of people.
And it works.
It does work.
It works.
Yeah.
Kids build friendships that will last them a lifetime. The kids that I grew up with in the organization are now people that eventually one day will be in my wedding.
Right.
So I think the friendships that you build when you're building something that's so incredible as this professional show that we put on are these friendships and these relationships that you'll have forever.
And it really is I mean, the adult volunteers, staff that you have is really professional. I mean, that's, I was impressed in looking at the website and seeing all of that with how really first class this is. As I was saying before, only one of my sons went to high school here, and despite my own feminist and intellectual leadings, I raised 3 jocks, so nobody was involved in theater. So
we'll take jocks, it's okay.
Right, yeah. I know. I mean, they are good for something. They can lift a lot of heavy things.
There you go.
So it was always good. But we were not involved with theater. But my mother was an alum of the Crane School of Potsdam,
right,
where your husband went to, and two of my brothers are involved in music, but one of them is the bassoon professor at the University of Michigan. So in fact, he's running some of those camps where prospective students of his come to show what they can do. So you know, I've seen how much music can add to life, and I think looking at the list of the shows that you've done is just, you know, a real cultural history of America.
Well, I think that goes back to what I was saying originally about the people who started it were very dedicated to that. And then, you know, as it is with any organization like this, the people who then become involved, typically it's the parents, because this is what your kids are doing, and that's how I got re-involved, was my son was participating. And actually that's how my husband started. He has a music degree and that kind of thing, but he actually started as a backstage volunteer, and then when the music director left, they said, oh, the board at the time, which I wasn't on at that point, said, you know, we'd like you to be the music director, and that morphed into the artistic director. So the people that we have bring this skill set, and I think it's what's great about it is they bring their backgrounds, their experience, but they also bring, in many cases, their parental skills as well, so that they kind of wear 2 hats, and they are able to help the kids grow as musicians, help the kids grow as actors, but also help them grow as individuals, and you know, sort of, again, the whole thing about becoming a team and all of that.
It's just fantastic. I think as we wrap up now, since you are a nonprofit. If people are interested in giving, is there information on your website?
There is.
How they could
There is, and thank you for asking.
Financially.
Yes, yes. Well, and we always welcome people who are interested in becoming involved as volunteers as well. We certainly benefit greatly from that. The website has ticket information. We would encourage everyone to come see the show. I mean, this is, it is high school and college kids, but it is nothing like you would expect.
It's pretty dazzling.
It's pretty dazzling. It is. They're spectacular.
I was just going to say, what's your favorite show? But I assume your favorite show is the one you're producing each year.
Probably. You can't think about any other shows.
Right. It's kind of the way that it goes. But our website, which is, I think you're listing, thank you very much for us.
Simsbury Summer Theater.
And it's important that it is theater RE,
okay.
because it's an organization as opposed to ER, which is a building, just in case anybody wonders why that's that. It is, all the information's on there about making donation and buying tickets. We also do sell tickets in the theater lobby, which that information will be there as well.
It fills up quickly.
So it does. Okay. It does.
So it's Fiddler on the Roof, and the first performance is
July 29th.
So you're the 29th,
30th, and 31st at 7. And then there's a 2 o'clock matinee on August 1st at Centennial Theater at Westminster School.
That's so terrific. I can't wait to see what happens next year then. And I really hope that it'll continue to be a success for you. But thank you, Nancy and Amanda, for sharing your stories with us today. And in particular, thank you for all you've done for generations of Simsbury youth. We hope one day that the Simsbury Summer Theater will be celebrating its own centennial. Remember, as we just said, this year's show, Fiddler on the Roof, July 29th, 30th, 31st at 7 p.m., August 1st at 2 p.m., all at the Werner Centennial Theater at the Westminster School, 995 Hot Meadow Street. Tickets available at simsburysummertheater.org or by calling 860-951-6860. Thank you all for watching, and we hope you'll join us again for another edition of The Simsbury Woman. Thanks a lot.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.